Okay, so here we come on to the next heading, art and architecture during the Sultanate period. Let's begin. Now, we have covered earlier the strategies of military control, then we talked of the port, we talked of the nobility, the land control, the resource mobilization, and other sources of income of the king. Now, next heading that we take up is the art and architecture during the Sultanate period. Now, the Turks were great genius in architecture. They brought with them the arts of Western and Central Asia. Please underline Western and Central Asia. That means earlier only Indian art was prevalent, but with the coming of Turks and Afghans, the art form in the architectures, in the buildings and the monuments which were made got a drastic change. So the art was influenced with the Western and Central Asian ways. Now, Dhai Din Ka Jhopra was a mosque constructed under the supervision of Muhammad Ghori. Underline this work, underline Dhai Din Ka Jhopra, underline Muhammad Ghori. So this is the monument, name of the monument, and the person, Muhammad Ghori, constructed it. As the legend goes, it is said to be constructed in 2.5 days. 2.5 days it was built in 2.5 days. Okay, that is why इसको ढाई दिन का झोपड़ा कहते हैं. It is a masterpiece of Indo-Islamic architecture. Underline Indo-Islamic. इंडिया के लोगों ने और इस्लामिक आर्किटेक्चर दोनों का मिक्सचर था ये. ओके. Now, the sultans employed Indian craftsmen for designing and constructing their buildings. And as a result, new style of architecture known as Indo-Islamic architecture developed. So, though the style was Islamic, but since they appointed Indian craftsmen, so when the building got ready, it was a mixture of Indo-Islamic ways because partially it was Indian and partially it was Islamic in its ways. This style may be seen in the buildings of Delhi. Example, there's Qutub Minar, which was Qutbuddin decided to construct a majestic minar. He started the construction of a new complex, Qutub Minar, and the Quwatul Islam Mosque. Now, these are the two works done by Qutbuddin Aibak. So, you underline Qutbuddin Aibak and the works he did, Qutub Minar and Quwatul Islam Mosque. Then Iltutmish completed Qutub Minar, which was started by Qutbuddin. Iltutmish, the slave dynasty second ruler, he finished it. Qutub complex is the most magnificent structure in Delhi. Then we talk of the Khaljis. Alauddin Khalji built a new capital called Siri near Qutub complex. He also built Alai Darwaza, the entrance door to the Qutub complex. So what did Alauddin did? He made a capital. He built a new capital city called Siri. Oh, okay, and there he also built Alai Darwaza, which was next to the Qutub complex. Then let's talk of Tughlaq. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq built the city of Tughlaqabad, and Firoz Shah Tughlaq built Firoz Shah Kotla. Please underline Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. He built Tughlaqabad. Firoz Shah Tughlaq. He built Firoz Shah Kotla. Now, the tomb of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq set a new trend in architecture. It is octagonal in shape. The tomb of Lodi sultans were built inside the gardens. So now, with the end of Tughlaq dynasty, when Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq died, his tomb, that means the place where he was buried, was also a structure. It was a great grand structure, octagonal in shape. That means it had 8 sides and it was a magnificent structure. And seeing that, many others also started doing the same. And so were the Lodis. The Lodi sultans also started constructing their tombs and they constructed it with a garden surrounding it. Okay. Most of the earlier buildings of the Sultanate period lacked correct proportions. They were made of bricks and stones. The monuments lacked grace. Arches and domes were a speciality of the buildings. Now, Though they were not very systematic, the buildings which were made, and they were not in very good proportion, but yet the use of arches and domes. Domes are देखा है ना गोल गोल गुम्बद जिसे कहते हैं ना गुम्बज. So those were made in arches and domes were made. Then calligraphy was used to decorate the buildings. Calligraphy, what does calligraphy mean? The art of writing beautifully. So most of the buildings were beautifully decorated with the written work. That means the writings were made on the walls, especially the Urdu verses from the Quran were taken. Experts, excerpts from the Quran were engraved on the walls of the buildings. See, as I told you, the Urdu language was written in a very decorative way, in a calligraphic way. Okay, and they were used as a decoration engraved on the walls. But then there was a downfall of the Delhi Sultanate. Now, what caused the downfall? How did the Delhi Sultanate came to an end? What were the causes? Let us see that. The Turks, Afghan sultans of Delhi ruled over India for more than 3 centuries, from 1206 to 1526. Okay, so they ruled for a pretty long time. 3 centuries. Century क्या होता है? 100 years. 3 centuries means 300 years. That means for nearly 300 years they had ruled India. But gradually they met their downfall. And the reasons for the downfall were number one, the sultans of Delhi had conquered India by sword and they ruled the country by sword. They did not try to win the confidence of their subjects. They were despotic by nature. So, first reason for a downfall was the sultans who came to India and conquered Delhi and became the sultans. They had been only using their sword, that means their power. They were stopping the Indian people to work on their own. And the subjects, that means the people, were not given the right. The sultans were despotic. Despotic means all in all powerful. So this led to the people thinking that they are not our people. The sultans were not our people. So they did not like, and this led to the downfall. Number two, most of the sultans were intolerant towards the Hindus. The Hindus were ill treated by them and were forced to convert to Islam. Their temples were destroyed and they were made to pay jizya. Even the Hindus converted to Islam did not enjoy a proper prestige. So I hope this point is clear. The injustice done to the other religion was taken into account, and many people, since they were converted into Islam, they did not like it, and so they did not follow it. And in their hearts, they did not agree with the fact. Then they were asked to pay jizya, which was again not liked by them. Next, third point. Most of the sultans were weak and pleasure loving rulers. Their nobles often revolted against them. They lacked loyalty to the sultan. So now you see the third point. The sultans were weak rulers and at the same time they were pleasure loving. That means हर समय उन्हें ऐश की चिंता होती थी अपने आराम की. And so the nobles were more powerful, and many a times nobles revolted and gained the seat. You have seen it also, where many nobles acquired power once the sultan died. Number four, most of the sultans depended on the army of their nobles or vassals. Some of the sultans maintained a huge army, but it was ill organized and ill disciplined. So now the sultan, he was the king, yet he had to depend upon the nobles when it came to the army. So because the nobles or the vassals, as they are called also in English, they were the ones who kept a well-maintained army. So a sultan had to definitely rely on nobles' work to whenever he took up a fight. And the army which sultans kept, they were very ill organized and ill disciplined. So it was only under the nobles they had to rely on. Number five, they had a vast empire. Lack of a good transport and communication system was a hindrance in ruling over such a vast empire. Now, most of the sultans had huge empire, but there was no means of proper means of communication or transport. So, lagging that, it was always a hindrance. The power the province which was away from the kingdom of the Sultan, most of the times that province gained its supremacy again and disobeyed Sultan most of the times. Okay. Then number six, the feudalism, that means Jagirdari system, proved fatal to them. It created powerful nobles but weakened the central government. Now, the feudal system, where the Jagirdars or the nobles who were given Jagirs became powerful, and they became gradually so powerful that even the king got weakened up in the center. Okay, why? Because the provinces were looked after by the Jagirdars, and these Jagirs were given by the Sultan only. So, what these nobles did, they occupied these Jagirs and started acting as kings in those Jagirs. And so, gradually, they became very powerful in their areas, and this weakened the king. Number seven, there was no definite law of succession. There were frequent wars and intrigues for the throne. So, we all know that. There was no power of succession. There was no fixed law that, okay, if the king died, his son would take over. No. Most of the time, every time a king died, there was a war for the throne. And whoever survived got the chance. So even if the king had sons, the sons were fighting among themselves. So there was no power of succession. Number eight, the invasion of the Mongols also weakened the empire. Timur struck a fatal blow to the Tughlaqs, and Babur put an end to the Sultanate in Delhi. So now there was constant attack from the Mongols. Now this weakened the empire. There were attacks from Genghis Khan. There was attack from Timur Lang, and then Babur was a Muslim ruler who came from who came to India as a invader, and he settled down here and started the Mughal dynasty and ended the Sultanate of Delhi. So with the last ruler Ibrahim Lodi, 1526, first battle of Panipat was fought between Ibrahim Lodi and Babur, in which Babur was victorious, and he settled here as a king and then started the Mughal rule in India. We'll take up the next chapter in our next class, but for now, please see that you do the important terms and be ready with it. Next time when we meet, I will be giving you the question answer. Okay.